Hey girls, welcome to the Asterisk Podcast. I'm your host, April Beyonda Lillo, and super excited because now you can see me when I'm talking to you rather than just hearing me. So you can still continue to follow along on Apple and Spotify, but now you can find us also on YouTube. So if you search my name, April Beyonda Lillo, you will see each of our podcast episodes there. We'll be uploading any of my messages that I'm giving at different events or churches. And my favorite part, I'm calling it my vlogging area, because if you haven't heard, we are taking Cherish on tour. Cherish Conference 2025 is going on tour to Fort Worth, Tri-Cities, and Seattle. And so I thought, what better way to celebrate than bringing my besties with me? So we're going to be vlogging behind the scenes of each conference, the locations, different people that we'll have featured with us. It's going to be super fun. So I cannot wait for you guys to follow along. So make sure on here you're following along, subscribe, share it with a friend. Do the same thing with YouTube. Your support means so much to me and to this ministry. And if you didn't know, this podcast is an extension of a ministry I run called Cherish, where we exist to empower every girl everywhere to discover her purpose and cherish her worth. And this podcast is really a place for stories to be shared, for different women to be vulnerable with areas where they have settled in their worth or misplaced their worth. And we are just saying, hey, we're in it together. No one's alone. Maybe you've walked into a church and felt like, I don't belong here. There's too much shame. Maybe there have been words spoken at you or around you because of your situation. We want this to be a safe place. All we're doing is facilitating a spot where different people can be vulnerable and sharing their story in hopes that it will resonate with you, encourage you, and let you know you're not alone, and how to walk that out on a daily basis from that point. So we have featured stories on body image, on mental health, on dating and relationships, sexual sin and addictions, and so much more. We've had incredible women featured here, and I cannot wait for the lineup for 2025. So glad that you're here. Today, I thought it would be super fun to start off the 2025 year sharing why we picked the theme of not a cool girl for conference. And it's going to hit at a lot of my own personal testimonies, areas where I have struggled as a woman with my worth, a lot of it being centered around rejection, feeling very rejected throughout different areas and seasons of my life. So I just wanted to be real with all of you and break that down of why not a cool girl. I think from a very simple standpoint, if I were going to sum it up for you, the reason I picked this is because there have been so many times in my own life where there's different labels or stereotypes put on me of what I need to be, how I need to perform, what I need to look like to be accepted by other people, by the world standards. And it just creates such a heaviness, such a burden, and this feeling of I never really get to just be me. And so instead of running from those labels, or instead of trying to overperform or overcompensate to be what everyone else says that you need to be, we're saying, you know what? I'm not those things. I'm not a cool girl because I'm exactly who God's called me to be. And that's all that matters. That it's all about putting our identity in Him and what He says, rather than trying to be like her or the person next to you or how society says you need to be. We are pursuing the things of God and walking confidently in that. We have all been there before, where we have felt like we had to be smarter, we had to be skinnier, we had to be funnier, we had to be fill in the blank. And we're saying, hey, whatever labels have been placed on you of what you're not, it's okay if you're not those things. Just be who God has called you to be. And I want to show you through my own personal journey of how you can do that and walk in confidence through that. So to give you guys a little bit of backstory, if you haven't known or haven't heard this before, I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, and I tell people that I grew up in the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, which meant I went to church all the time. Had two incredible parents who have showed me what it looks like to have a personal relationship with Jesus. It was never going through the motions. It was never checking off a box on a list. It was a real surrendered relationship with Jesus. And they modeled that because they learned that they had to walk that through themselves. They couldn't just have a surface relationship. And there's so much in their own journey that really set them up to experience, man, God is not looking for perfect people. He's just looking for people to be present and real. And so grew up in the church, absolutely loved it. And as I started to grow up, when I was in the 4th grade, I started to get bullied for the way that I looked. And it wasn't like these big scenes where everyone's like circling around you, laughing at you, making jokes, but it was in the whispers, it was in the side conversations, and everything that they had to speak about was my weight. I was called fat, I was called ugly, and I remember getting to a point where my parents had to come in and make a plan with the teacher to get the bullying to stop. And even though the bullying did stop, I never was able to look at myself the same when I looked in that mirror. Now all I saw were those words of fat and ugly, and it was the first time that I hated the image reflected back at me. And so going in from that space to middle school is very much a development time of one's life. And I started to have feelings for boys. I thought they were very cute, but boys did not find me to be cute, as other girls were holding hands with their boyfriend for the first time down the hallways or being asked to school dances. I was not. So you take the words spoken over me at a young age and partner that with the constant rejection. And now I was at this point of, man, there's not like an issue in my life. I'm the issue. Like, I was so frustrated at the Lord because I grew up knowing him. I loved him. And I would be in settings in the church where I would be told I was beautifully and wonderfully made. But when I would leave that room, those weren't the words echoed back to me. So I became very angry at the Lord of, why did you take your time on her and forget about me? Why couldn't you have made me just to look a little bit like her that's liked, loved, and accepted in this world? And so I felt like he glanced over me, and I was really hurt by that. When I got into 7th grade, I got my first MySpace account. And when I was on MySpace, I remember my parents being a little hesitant with me having MySpace, but we had some rules and boundaries. But I ended up getting messages from strangers, these different guys telling me how beautiful I was. And I was so desperate to hear those words that it didn't matter who it was coming from or how it was that I was hearing it. So I began to have seemingly innocent conversations online with strangers. And when I got into 8th grade, I got my first cell phone. And now these conversations moved from MySpace to my phone, which I would have with me at all hours through the night, during the day. And now I was having these conversations, not just periodically sneaking off into my parents' office to get on MySpace and have these chats, but now I had this device right with me all the time to have these types of conversations, and they soon turned into more inappropriate conversations, what we would refer to as sexting. And the reason I believe it got to this point is because for me, I was searching. I was searching for beauty. I was searching for my worth. I had no idea what it meant to have my identity in the Lord. Yes, I grew up in the church and I heard all these things, but it hadn't become real. It hadn't become personal. And I was mad at him. So there was this huge wall. And all I desperately wanted was to be seen by the opposite sex, to be seen in a way where I could fit in with my friends, my girlfriends, talking about different guys. Like, I just didn't know how to relate. And so now I had this way of, without telling them the full truth of, I didn't know these guys and wouldn't tell them how we were talking. I would just share bits and pieces so that I could fit in. And for a moment, it was satisfying. For a moment, it made me feel wanted. That was my idea of what love was, but it wasn't love, it was lust. And what I soon found out is sin always takes you further than you wanted to go and keeps you there longer than you wanted to stay. After a period of time of having these conversations, it made me feel uncomfortable. It made me feel gross, and I felt a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. I didn't know how to get out of it. I felt very trapped, and I wanted to share with other people, but no one was talking about it at that time. Like, social media really wasn't a thing. There wasn't as much exposure like we do today. Phones, this whole concept, it was so new. And so because there weren't conversations around it, and even in the church, if we talked about anything about relationships and sex and sexuality, we just really didn't go there enough. And if we did, it was geared towards the guys. So there wasn't a safe space to go and to share what I was going through. And I felt like I was the only one doing this. So I kept hidden in that space. And there was also a lot of fear. Like, if I'm practical about it, if I didn't, I'm going to call it, perform in the way that I needed to with these random guys that I was talking to through texting, there was this fear that they had all this information, things that I had said, things that I had sent that they could use against me. So I kept in this rhythm, trapped for real, and not knowing how do I get out of this. And so when you're ever in a space like that where it consumes you and it isolates you, it starts to make you feel so full of shame, but it's so much deeper than that. I don't even know if I could speak to how trapped I felt. It was every night just crying my eyes out, wanting to tell my parents. And there were moments where I would get close to, but I was just so ashamed and so embarrassed. And I didn't want to ruin the image of being this perfect girl. And that was a lot of how I viewed Christianity, that God only loves perfect people. So my life needed to be perfect. I knew God could see all the areas of where I was struggling, but no one else did. So I felt I'll just keep to this perfect image of everyone will always see me, how I fit in so well. People want to have a kid like April. Look at how she leads at youth group. She gets good grades. She doesn't get in trouble. Like, there was so much pressure to perform, to be, and I'm a natural achiever. So I did not want to embarrass or let down anyone that I knew, my friends, my leaders, my parents. I remember trying to talk to my friends at the time, but I just promised it would never happen again. And they didn't understand to the extent of how deep this was in my life. And I wanted to paint a picture in that because I know that there could be other girls that feel trapped like that right now, that don't know where to go. It's so bad. It's like, April, if you knew, it would be so embarrassing, it'd be so bad. And I just want you to know, like, I know what it's like to be in that place. And what's so beautiful is God is so much bigger. The enemy wants to fill your life with lies, to make you believe that there's no hope, there's no way out, this is your life forever. And that's where I was, that I was complete dirt. Like, if I felt rejected before, now I was rejected by God, and that felt even worse. Like, what was the point? So now I had just become very apathetic in life. And I mean, that was in everything. The way I dressed, the way I talked with people, my grades. I was underperforming because now it was just like, what's the point? Like, who cares? No one sees me. It's all lies, but those lies become the only narrative, the only reality that you know. So I remember my senior year of high school, I went to a church summer camp. I went every year because all of my friends would go. It was super fun. And I remember being at camp and just sitting through every service like it's the same old, same old. And the last night we were in this point of worship. And I remember looking around at all of my friends, and they are like fully engaged into the presence of the Lord. No one's on their phones. No one's talking. Like, they're experiencing something. And I remember this feeling welling up inside of me of just pure jealousy of, God, I want that. Like, I want to be a part of something bigger than this. My life feels so pointless. I don't even know why I'm here. I feel like trash. I feel like garbage, and I don't want to be in this place. And I remember just having the most honest conversation with the Lord, saying, if you see it all, you see everything of where I've been, what I've done, and if you could still use someone like me, if you would still want someone like me, I think I may want that. And I remember Carrie Job started singing these lyrics in worship, saying, I will never, I don't even know how to explain it. It was just like through her lyrics, through what she was singing, God was speaking to me. Your weakness will never be the end. Like, I will not forsake you in your weaknesses. And it was as if God was saying, like, April, I've seen it, but this sin won't define you, but I will. And I dropped to my knees and I just wept because I was so in this place of thinking for a long time that in order to be loved by God, I had to have this perfect room. And I was embarrassed to show him how dirty my room had gotten. But the reality was God saw the mess, and he didn't even care about it, because really all he saw wasn't really the mess, but it was me. And as I experienced him in that moment, I didn't want to leave that place the same. I wanted to be different. So I knew I had to confess. And I knew for me, it had to be this public matter, because really it was just what the Lord was leading me to. And I wanted to be obedient. And I felt if I didn't share, I would act as if it didn't happen. I had made it all up in my head. I didn't really hear God. God didn't really want me. And so I remember every night after camp, we would have a time of just sharing testimonies of what God was doing in our lives. And That night, I got up in front of all of my friends, my parents as leaders, and I shared that for the last few years, I've been struggling with sexting, addicted to sexual sin. And I fell to my knees and I wept, and I felt literal chains break from me. And where I thought I would be brushed aside, overlooked, kicked out of leadership, I watched student after student embrace me. I watched student after student share similar struggles. And y'all, when I tell you I was shocked, I had no idea other people struggled with this. I was that trapped. I felt that alone that I couldn't even see that this was something that many people were struggling with. And I recognized in that moment that the Lord was calling me. He said, April, I'm going to take your story from place to place to bring healing and restoration if you'll allow me, if you'll continue to be obedient and seek after me. And so from there, I went to Oral Roberts University. I had gone through a period of, I gave up my phone. Like, I was being honest with conversations with my parents, as much as I wanted to share. And the reality is sin in your life. I do believe you can be healed in a moment, but oftentimes it's a process. And for me, it was definitely a process of where I just wanted to remove the phone, or, maybe it's, I'm just going to remove social media, or I'm just going to remove, whatever situation from your life. The reality is God is asking us not just to pick off the bad fruit on our tree. If we look at our life as a tree, because the bad fruit, what's going to replace it is bad fruit. He's asking us to go down to the root issue, to pull it up. And so during my time in my freshman year of college, it was so hard. I only had a roommate in my room with me for the first semester. And after that, I was all by myself. There was no parents, there was no accountability. And I got really lost in that sexual sin again. And I remember the Lord just speaking to me again and again, pulling me closer, bringing people into my life to be open and real with. And I remember confessing to our head chaplain at our school just different things I was struggling with. I started getting into counseling, and I realized that my root issue came to this word rejection. And because I felt so rejected, I was doing everything to be accepted anywhere. And I had to deal with that lie of rejection and learn how to replace it with the truth. If I was so accepted, instead of living for acceptance, I could live from it. And so I started to have to put some boundaries and guardrails up. I could not be alone in that room by myself. It just was going to be a trigger to cycle back into my old habits. And so I got really into running. I started training for half marathons. I was signing up for different opportunities to serve at my school and leadership roles. And I'm not saying I was replacing all of the bad with just something good, but it was as I was serving and pouring out, the Lord just started to show me more and more of who I was. I was going on missions trips. I was raising money to go to Uganda, Africa. And while I was on this trip, it ended up being a preaching focused trip. And during that time, I realized that the Lord had put inside of me a gift to speak. I started to speak at different churches, getting opportunities to speak. I started writing blogs. And all of a sudden, it was this reality of every negative message that had come out of me, the Lord was redeeming, just like he did with Peter when he denied Jesus 3 times and he came back and asked Peter, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? That's what God was doing with me. He said, April, I'm redeeming what the enemy tried to use for bad. I'm going to use it for good. And I'm going to make this for the best thing for you. Your pain's going to become your platform. And that is honestly, girls, what he has been doing. That there were some real things that I had to fight, some loneliness of, it wasn't like all of a sudden now all these guys were pursuing me and everything was fine. I had to realize, where did my identity fall, even when I was so lonely, when I still wasn't getting asked out by guys in college, being embarrassed that I hadn't kissed a guy. I didn't have my first kiss till I was, 20 years old. And that was embarrassing. Like, there was just some real things that were difficult for me and I didn't understand it. But the Lord was like, April, those are just distractions right now. I have something for you. And honestly, I can say that when I found my identity in him and really found that and walked it out, I didn't care anymore what people said or what people did, because I knew who I was. And that's the kind of confidence I want each one of us to discover, and it to be this movement of, it doesn't matter what people try to say about you. When you know who you are in Christ, it won't shake you. It won't rock you. And I had to right after college, my senior year, I ended up getting into a relationship. We dated for 2 years. That relationship ended. I ended up moving from Texas to Washington. I was a youth pastor there for 5 years. And in those first 3 years, I was so alone. I felt so lonely, but I realized loneliness was just time to be alone with God. And I would just get on my knees and I would just weep before the Lord. And it was the sweetest time of my life because He was redeeming so much. And scripture He spoke to me was Hosea 2. It says, I'm going to lure her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. I'm going to remind her the days of her youth. And it was this concept for me of, I'm in the wilderness. I'm in Washington. No one knows me. I didn't realize how much codependency I had on people, that I didn't know how to just be me, just to have my own voice, just to walk out who God had called me to be. I was so in need of someone to tell me how awesome I was, someone to tell me how beautiful I was, to have that attention, that validation. And the Lord was like, you don't need those things. You just need me. And during that time, it was such a deep awareness and confidence of who God was in my life and what He had in store for me. I discovered my voice, my purpose. I was leading and ministry as a pastor before I was married, all on my own. And I just love that the Lord did that. It was so hard, but it was a choice to choose of, I can have a fulfilling life even when I'm all just me and Him. And it could be this adventure. And if I don't have, the house, the kids, the marriage, the fill in the blank, if I'm not this certain size, it's not about those things. And I think for so long, I just allowed all the labels, all of the voices, all the stereotypes to make me strive and perform until all of a sudden I said, well, who am I doing this for? The Lord doesn't want me to be cool. He doesn't want Cherish Ministry to be a space where everyone comes and they look the same and they act the same. That's being fake. It's not being real. I want to be in a place where it's not hype. It's not trendy, but it's just, here I am, Lord, use me. I'm not a cool girl. Sorry if you didn't know it. There's nothing cool about me, but the Lord is in my life and the Lord has called me and He has purposed me, and I get to walk confidently, not because of anything of my own doing. Because in my flesh, when I look in that mirror, I still struggle. There's still areas that I really have to lay that down before the Lord. But the reality is, God is just calling us to be confident and to walk in the things that He has called us to do. Could you imagine? This is what I see, this movement of women championing one another, celebrating one another, not fighting, not competing, but cheering each other on in the good work that God has called them to. So if you are listening and you struggle with this idea of rejection, and you're like, it's not just something internally. I feel like the people around me, I've never fit into friend groups. I've never had a relationship. I feel like I don't do well at school. I feel like I don't have this certain... Can I just encourage you? It's not about that. Man, God sees you. And us as girls, yeah, we all struggle with those things. And what would it look like if we chose to be real about that? What would it look like if we chose to be vulnerable and say, hey, it's okay. You don't have to look those ways. You don't have to act those ways, but God just wants you to walk in who He has called you to be. That's what I am expectant for. That is what I'm excited about for Cherish Conference, going to all 3 different locations, because God has put a message on my heart that it doesn't matter where you've been, what you've gone through, what you're currently dealing with. Nothing is too dirty that He cannot heal, not that He can't restore. He loves you. He sees you. You don't have to strive. You don't have to perform. You can come as you are. And just like me, as I experienced Him in my life, I wanted to continue to make my life more pleasing. I wanted to look more like Jesus. I want to continue to help more women be set free from lies, bondage, sin, addictions in their life, and to walk confidently in who God called them to be. So girls, I love you. I am cheering you on from afar, that you are called by God. He has so many incredible things and giftings set up for you specifically, and I hope you'll get to join us on this tour. If you're near Fort Worth, Texas, Tri-Cities, Washington, or Seattle, Washington, man, make the trip, be there, because God is going to show up and He is going to surround us in a community of women that are saying, no more striving, no more trying to be like her. We are going to break the mold. We are going to stand out, and we are going to walk confidently. So girls, it's time to not be a cool girl. I love you all. Thanks for being here, and we will see you back soon.